10,000 voices are silenced in a single afternoon. On September 9th, 1513, in the rain-drenched fields of Northumberland, Scotland's greatest army is shattered. This is not just a defeat, it is the decapitation of a nation. Among the fallen lies King James IV, the last monarch in British history to fall in battle. His body is disfigured by arrows and the brutal swing of English billhooks. Beside him lie his bishops, earls, and the very soul of a kingdom. This is how the Renaissance dream of Scotland died. The magnitude of the disaster is impossible to grasp. In 3 hours, 1/3 of the Scottish host is wiped out. This slaughter was born from a position of unassailable strength. James IV held the high ground and the finest artillery in Europe. Yet, through overconfidence and a rigid code of honor, he turned a sure victory into a catastrophe. We will now witness how the flowers of the forest were cut down in the mud of Flodden, beginning with the flawed heart of the king himself. King James IV is the ultimate Renaissance prince. A polymath who speaks 6 languages and studies science, he is the last Scottish king to speak Gaelic, but he is haunted. Since the death of his father at Sochiburn, James has worn a heavy iron belt next to his skin as penance, adding a link every year. This crushing weight of guilt drives his obsession with chivalry. For James, honor is more valuable than life, or even his kingdom's survival, a trait his enemies will exploit. In 1513, Europe is a tinderbox. When Henry VIII of England invades France, the French King Louis XII invokes the Old Alliance. James is torn between a peace treaty with his brother-in-law and his sacred oath to France. Chivalry wins. He summons the largest army Scotland has ever seen, nearly 40,000 men. They march south, dragging the Seven Sisters, massive brass culverins that require teams of 36 oxen to pull through the thickening Northumbrian clay. The invasion begins with the roar of heavy brass and fire. While Henry VIII fights in France, the defense of England falls to his queen, Catherine of Aragon. She is no passive regent, she is the daughter of Isabella of Castile. Catherine mobilizes the northern shires, shipping armor, grain, and gold to the front. She commissions the Earl of Surrey, a 70-year-old veteran of the Wars of the Roses. While James plays the part of the knightly king, Catherine and Surrey prepare a cold, calculated defense of the realm, proving that Spanish blood is made of iron. The Earl of Surrey is a man of the old world, a pragmatist who cares nothing for the grand gestures of the Renaissance. He knows his army is smaller and his guns are outmatched. He needs to bait the Scots into a mistake. James has taken a position on Flodden Edge, a ridge so steep it is nearly impossible to attack. From this height, the Scottish cannons look down upon the English like predators. To win, Surrey must do the unthinkable and risk his entire host. On September 8th, Surrey makes a desperate gamble. In full view of the Scottish army, he leads his entire force on a miles-long flanking march. He crosses the River Till at Twizel Bridge, effectively moving behind James and cutting off the Scottish path back home. It is a suicidal maneuver if James attacks during the transit. But James watches from the ridge, paralyzed by a code of honor that demands a face-to-face confrontation, not a strike against a marching column. He lets the trap close. By the morning of September 9th, James realizes he is trapped. The English have reappeared to his north, occupying a slight rise near the village of Branxton. Infuriated by the impertinence of an earl challenging a king, James orders his men to burn their camp refuse. A wall of black smoke rises, acting as a screen. Under this shroud, the Scottish host moves a mile north to Branxton Hill. They trade a fortress for a slightly lower ridge, unaware that the terrain below is their true enemy. The atmosphere at 4 o'clock in the afternoon is heavy with dread. The wind picks up, and a cold rain begins to slick the slopes. James surveys his divisions, bristling with 18-foot Swiss-style pikes. These are the latest European weapons, designed to be unstoppable waves of steel. But they have never been tested on English soil. Beneath them, the English stand ready with their traditional bills and longbows, watching the smoke clear as the artillery begins its roar across the shallow, marshy valley below. The artillery duel is a disaster for Scotland. The Seven Sisters are siege guns, built to crush stone walls, not for field combat. Firing downhill, their heavy shots sail harmlessly over the English ranks or sink deep into the soft earth. The lighter English field pieces are far more accurate. Their gunners find their range quickly, decapitating the Scottish artillery crews and tearing bloody lanes through the dense pike blocks waiting on the slopes above. Chaos takes root before a single soldier has moved a step. Frustrated by the English bombardment, the Scottish left wing under Lord Home finally snaps. They charge downhill, their long spears glistening in the grey light. They smash into the English right, sending the Shire levies fleeing in terror. For a moment, it looks like a Scottish victory. But the momentum dies as Home's men stop to loot the English baggage. Surrey sees the gap and throws in his reserve of horsemen under Lord Dacre, stabilizing the line and turning a breakthrough into a bloody stalemate. Witnessing the initial success of his left wing, James IV makes the fatal decision that will end his line. He orders the centre divisions to advance. These are the pride of Scotland, the most heavily armoured men in the host. They lower their 18-foot pikes, forming a wall of steel that rolls down Branxton Hill like a landslide. But between the hill and the English line lies a patch of ground that no Scottish scout has surveyed, a hidden obstacle that will break their charge. As the massive Scottish schiltrons descend, they enter a topographical trap. The bottom of the valley is not solid ground. It is a marshy bog, turned into a quagmire by weeks of rain. The effect is catastrophic. The synchronized march of the pikemen fails. Thousands of men stumble and slide, their boots sucked off by the mud. The tight formations, which depend on perfect cohesion, begin to shatter as the front ranks fall and the rear ranks push forward into a disorganized, struggling mass. The 18-foot pike, once a symbol of modern power, becomes a death sentence. In the marsh, these massive poles are unwieldy and useless. Men drop them in desperation, reaching for swords and axes, but the English billmen are already upon them. The English bill is an 8-foot polearm with a heavy chopping blade and a cruel hook. It is the perfect tool for this chaos. The billmen pull the pikes aside and hack through armor with terrifying force, turning the valley into a slaughterhouse. The sound of the battle changes. The rhythmic tramp of a march is replaced by the sickening hew and hack of the bills. The English use their hooks to pull Scottish knights from their feet, dragging them into the mire. At the same time, English archers pour a hailstorm of arrows into the Scottish rear. The armor James provided for his nobility holds against the arrows, but it cannot stop the blunt force of the heavy bills in the mud. The Scottish line begins to dissolve. King James IV refuses to command from the rear. In a final act of tactical insanity, he dismounts and leads his own division into the thick of the fight. He is driven by that lifelong guilt, the iron belt cinched tight around his waist. He hacks his way forward on foot, a king-turned-common soldier seeking the Earl of Surrey in the middle of a massacre. He fights with a ferocity that stuns even his enemies, driven by the need for one last atonement. But there is no chivalric duel today. The English divisions on the flanks have won their skirmishes and now wheel inward, surrounding the Scottish centre. James and his bodyguard are trapped in a ring of bills. The flowers of the forest, the elite of Scottish society, form a circle around their king, fighting back-to-back as the bills rise and fall. James is struck by an arrow in the mouth, then another in the neck, before a final blow from a billhook nearly severs his arm. By nightfall, the silence over Branxton Moor is more terrifying than the noise of the battle. 10,000 Scots lie in the mire. The casualty list reads like a roll call of the nation's leadership. 9 earls, 14 lords, and the Archbishop of St. Andrews. The Earl of Surrey, now a duke, has won the most decisive victory of the age. James IV's body is identified the next morning, found among a pile of corpses, identified by that telltale iron belt of penance he wore. The aftermath is grim and ignominious. Because James died excommunicated, his body is denied a Christian burial. It is taken to London in a lead coffin, where it is eventually forgotten in a woodshed at Sheen Priory. Legend says his head was later used as a toy by workmen before being lost in a mass grave. Back in Scotland, the news of the slaughter creates a vacuum of power. A 17-month-old infant, James V, is crowned in a nation mourning its lost youth and leadership. Flodden is a permanent scar on the Scottish psyche, a tragedy of the Renaissance prince who tried to modernize but was undone by medieval honor. Yet, through the marriage James sought to protect, his great-grandson would eventually inherit the English throne, fulfilling a union of crowns that began in peace and died in war. Every year, the Flowers of the Forest is played, ensuring that the day the Pikes met the Bills in the Northumberland mud will never be forgotten by the Scottish people. If this journey into the dark heart of history moved you, join us as we continue to chronicle the events that shaped our world. The Battle of Flodden is a powerful reminder of how the decisions of a single leader can echo through centuries. Subscribe to our channel to ensure you never miss an episode and hit the notification bell for more. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Could James have won if he stayed on the ridge? Thank you for watching.